Okay, so I've come to the end of my second part that has the ribbing and the sole. Here's the front side, and you can see how beautiful we made it, our beautiful seams, because we just crossed over our yarn before we knit along. So now we're going to sew it together. So that means we're going to sew it from the front. We end on the back. So we start to sew together from the front. So I only need this bobbin. I don't need all these other ones hanging here. So I am going to cut them now because they're just in the way, and I'm going to sew them in a little later before we sew the whole thing together. So they're all chopped. So now I just have my tails to sew in and my bobbin ends to sew in. And now we're going to join the toe together. So very simple. To do that, we are going to, I'm just going to unroll. You can see I came almost to the end. This one I came almost to the end. This one I had plenty left. Plenty. That was my center one. That was the one that was about the size of an orange. If you're worried that you're not going to have enough, just make them a little bit bigger. We are going to use this yarn when we make the ears. So, you know, this one has plenty left. That's cutting it a bit close. So, you know, make them, you know, bigger than a golf ball. Make the middle one the size of, you know, a baseball, if that makes you more comfortable, and the side ones just for these four, you know, 4 stitches, again about the size of a golf ball, and you'll be fine. I hardly have any left here, but it's going to be enough to finish off. So we are going to slip, put our needle in the front and knit 2 together, and we're going to continue doing that all the way across, just in the solid main color. Slip, knit 2 together. What this does is it puts the stitches behind the work. Slip, go in, knit 2 together, slip, go back in the front, knit 2 together, slip. I'm slipping purlwise, slip, putting my needle back in the front, and I'm going to knit 2 together, slip, knit 2 together, slip, knit 2 together all the way across. Okay, so we'll meet you at the end. Okay, so here we are at the end. I've got 1 stitch left on my needle because it's an odd number of stitches, so I'm just going to knit that. And now we turn it around, and you might want to just tighten up your ends. Everything should be fine. It's looking beautiful. And so this side we just purl straight across. Just at the end of this little bobbin. I don't have anything left, but it's fine. It's plenty actually. So we're just going to purl, straight across. Okay, and then I'll see you at the end of this row. Okay, so I'm at the end of my purl row, my last purl. I'm going to turn around, and this is our final row, and same thing, slip, put the needle back in the front and knit, slip, put your needle back in the front and knit, purlwise, remember, slip, put your needle back in the front, knit, slip, knit, and so on till the end of this row. Okay, I'm at my last 2 stitches, so I'm going to slip, and knit. And so we are done. Now we're going to do the sewing together. Now I've got just a little bit of left on my bobbin. Whatever amount you have, you know, just cut as much as you need to sew to here and to just tie this up. So I'm just going to get my needle here and I'm going to thread it. The best way I've ever found to thread needle is to bend it over and then shove it through, so you don't have to deal with the ends at all. Now if you've got one of those needle puller things, those things are awesome too. They're great. So I'm just going to start at this end and put my needle under. Now, because this is one of the benefits of working on circular needles, you could do this whole job on DPNs too, right? So you could have you know, two-sided straight needles as well, because this is awfully handy, because now I can just bring my needle, I can just pull the stitches off as I knit into them. If you have it on a straight needle that's got a fixed end though, just thread it through, or maybe, I don't know, move them onto a different needle, and then, like, I don't know. I honestly don't know what I would do if I didn't have either DPNs or a circular needle. In this case, I would just, you know, slide my needle under carefully, I guess. So here's my needle through all the stitches, so I'm just going to pull it through. Oh, I got my tails up in here. And then I'm just going to pull that tight. Now before, well, I guess I'll sew it together right now. So I'm going to sew this together up to about here, right? About, earlier I said 4 rows, but for me it's actually 8 rows of knitting. It's 4 rows of garter stitch. So I'm going to sew to about the 4th row of garter stitch there. And I honestly don't worry too much about my technique here. I just make sure I've got it all, I've got something in. Now if you're using a blunt ended needle, that's fine, and you want to go under, you know, the outside of each stitch. I can pretty much do this with a pointed needle as well as sharp needle, but just, you know, get it all in. So I'll meet up with you when I get up to the top here. Okay, so here I am up at the top, and I've sewn to, you know, the 4th one in to give some room, and so now I'm just going to sew backwards, back in the opposite direction, just to tie it in. Just a couple, and then I'm going to sew it back again. Because I'm using a pointed needle, it's getting in there, you know, nice and tight between the fibers. If you're using a dull needle, you can do the same thing by, you know, sort of weaving in rather than sewing in. Just make sure you go back and forth a couple of times so that it's in there for sure. Okay, I'm going to do one last time to get rid of my yarn. Go down a bit further, and that will be done. So I'm going to cut that. And now I just have to weave in my little ends here. So I'm just, you know, folding over and pulling it through. Even that, see that ratty end? No problem. So this, I just have to just get it in there somewhere. And now I'm going to pull it really super tight because my thread's too short, but I'll loosen it up again in a minute. And that's actually good enough, just twice. Normally I would do it 3 times, but inside this slipper, it's not going to get a lot of wear and tear on that seam. It's going to be fine. So I'm going to continue around and sew in my seams, and then, you know, we sew the back seam. So the back seam is easy. It's just folded. You just fold it in half. You've already got your tail that we saved right at the very beginning when we cast on. And we are going to just knit this, fold it in half, and knit together. And don't worry that you think the heel's weird. It won't be. When you put it on, it fits perfectly. So I'm just gonna, you could do a mattress stitch here if you wanted to be, you know, really neat about it. Me, for things like slippers and stuff, you know, I just sewed it. it's virtually invisible. It doesn't really matter. If it was a sweater or something, I would be much more careful with my seaming. But for these, you know, I make sure I do it well, but it's not, you know, it's not some knitting sample. So that's it. Just sew to the bottom, you know, sew up and down to get your ends tied in. Tie in these ends, and then we'll come back and talk about the ears and the eyes and the nose. Okay. Okay, so I've sewed in my last end here. I'm just going to snip it, turn my slipper inside out, and you will see it for the thing of beauty that it is. Here we go. So you can see that the heel is going to be just wonderful when you're wearing it, or whoever you're making it for is wearing it. These soles stretch out. You can, if you want, while you're after you get past the midpoint, you can do a knit front back on each side, and you can make your sole go out wider if you want. And then when you're coming toward the end, you can knit a couple of together and bring it back again. So you can adjust that. You can make this go out wider by adding a couple of extra stitches in. I don't see that it's necessary when I'm wearing these, because they just stretch out. See, they just stretch out and they're fine. So to me, it's fine to have just a straight sole, but if you feel like it, you can definitely bow it out and then go back in. Okay, so here's our slipper. Now, okay, so we're working on the ears now. They're in two parts, the back in the main color, and then we do it's just a simple triangle, and then we do another triangle in the white and sew it on. This is this charcoal here is the last 3 rows of the main triangle. So we're going to start by casting on 10 stitches and leaving a little bit of a tail, because you want to use it to sew the ear to the slipper. So I'm just going to cast on 10. That's 1, 2, 10. So the first row is a knit, second row is purl, and then that's repeated. Knit a row and purl a row. Okay, so I'm going to knit all the way across, and then I'm going to turn and purl all the way across, and I'm going to repeat that again. Okay. The decrease. The first stitch we knit, because we want to have this border around, so we knit the 2 outside stitches, and now we slip, put our needle back in the front and knit to get those 2 together, and then we knit to the last 3 stitches, depending on how wide you make it. If you want to make your ear bigger or slightly smaller, that's fine. Do it in even numbers of stitches, and then knit, slip, knit to your last 3 stitches, knit 2 together, knit 1. That's our first row of decrease, and then we're going to turn around and purl this row, and we're going to come back and do the same thing. Now we have 4 stitches on the needle, and we are going to purl 4, and then we're going to do a color change to this charcoal for the accent. Now if you want to do your ears just all one color, that's fine. Just don't add a new color in now. So we've got 4 stitches on the needle. Now I am adding the charcoal. And I'm just going to hold this tight. So I'm going to knit that. I'm actually going to knit all the way across with this charcoal. And then I'm going to turn and purl those 4 stitches. And now I am just going to, I'm not going to purl, I'm not going to knit one, I'm just going to slip, slip, I've got my stuff split there, okay, slip, slip, and knit that one, and I'm going to knit these two together. And now I'm going to purl these two, and then I'm going to knit the last two together, and I'm going to cut my yarn. Okay, so that, and now I'm going to knit these two together, and that'll be the end of it. And pull this through, reach in and pull that through, and I'm done. So we're making two of these, obviously. I actually don't need this to be too long. So we have the back here, cut the yarn right where we finished with the red and keeping our long tail to sew it in. So for the black, for the loose end, I'm actually going to just try to put it through straight here. We just have to bind this in so it doesn't come unraveled. I'm just sewing it up once because for mine I make the ears a little bit tufted here, so all I did was tie these two ends together. And they're snug. And then I cut it fairly short. Oh, I cut that a bit shorter. And then I just unraveled the yarn just for this sort of tufted look. And then I've got this back, this one, the tail I'm keeping to sew in, but I still have this loose end that has to be sewn in or it will unravel. Okay, so there's our main part of the ear. Now we do the inside, which is going to be sewn onto the front here, and that is exactly the same as what we just did, but without a purl, purl, and then I'm going to knit these two together. And you can see by doing the slip, slip, knit and the knit two together, we've gotten them, you know, pointing towards each other. We've gotten them sort of converging at the top here. So knit these last two stitches together, and I'm going to pull that up and cut it. And I've got my tail to sew in. I'm going to sew in this straggler, this loose end. Okay, that's the top of my ear, so I'm just going to sew this in to make it secure so it doesn't come untangled. There, that's good because I'm going to be sewing all around anyway, so it's going to be fine. Just trim that. Okay, so I have my ear, And now I'm going to sew the white part on. Oh, you know what? I had a knot. I had a join in my yarn. There. Okay, so I'm going to just thread this needle again. And here's the top of my, no, that's the bottom, here's the top. So I'm going to squeeze these as close as possible, these bottoms, try to leave a little edge. And then I'm just going to start sewing it. The thing is, I don't want to sew all the way through. I want to sew, so having a pointed needle is probably your best bet here. If you can do it with a blunt end needle, go ahead, but a pointed needle is really helpful because you want to attach it, but you don't want to sew all the way through to the back because you don't want the white sewing to show. So you're just sewing to the surface of the back of the ear. So I'm just going to sew all the way around without going all the way through, and then we'll come back. Okay, I've sewn all the way around. Now I'm just going to bury that in here. Bury my, my loose end in here. Take it back one more time. That should be fine. So I'm going to snip that end. And now we sew the ears to the slipper. And it's a fairly simple process. I put them, I put them a little bit back and sort of toward. Just position them however or wherever you want. And then I just start sewing. Okay, so here I am with my ears sewn on. Okay, so to knit the eyes is a very simple and quick. You could use buttons if you like. For the nose, you could use a little black pom-pom. You could also use a button. And these ones, my original ones actually are crocheted, but for this one, I'll show you. If you know how to crochet, you know how to crochet a disc. But if you want to knit your eyes, it's a simple matter as well. You cast on 3 and knit those 3 and then purl them. And now we turn and we're going to knit front and back. So knit like you normally would, then swing your needle around and go and knit in the back of that same stitch, and then knit 1, knit like you normally would, swing your needle around and go knit into the back of that same stitch. Now we have 5 on the needle. Turn, we are going to purl 5. And now we are going to slip purlwise, slip, slip, put our needle in the front. Oh, I've got my thread, I've got my yarn forward here. My needle in the front, and knit those 2 together. And we're going to knit 1. And then we're going to knit those 2 together. That gives us, well, let's get these 2 knit together properly. And now we're going to purl these 3. And now we're going to cast off. So we're going to knit 1, knit 2, slide over, knit 3, slide over, pull our yarn through, cut it, and done. And so we've got a nice little eye to put on here. Can just, when you're sewing it on, you just mold it, you just mush it to how you want it to look while you're sewing it on, and that's a perfectly nice little eye, which also doubles as a nose. Now for the green, I did a crochet chain. If you know how to crochet a chain, what I did was I crocheted it longer than I needed. Now I'm left-handed, so don't get freaked out by the way I crochet. It's just I'm left-handed. You can do it as a right-handed person. Do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, so I have my eye sewed down. I do way more chains than I know I need. And then I wrap it around to see how many I need. I wrap it around just to see how many I need. And then I pull it out. I pull my tail through. And then, so I've got this. And then I just cut off enough that I know that I need to sew the circle onto my eye once I've got my eye sewn down. Have my eye sewed down, and then I'm going to sew that around it. And then I just used a little bit of white thread just to sew, a couple of loops for highlights. Sew it on my nose, and we'll be done. And that's it. I've just sewed in my highlights, and there we have our fox slippers. They're good and stretchy, they're comfortable, they're adorable. Now, I hope you enjoyed this knit along, and I'm actually working on another one, so stay tuned for more to come. Thanks for knitting along. Bye.